Welcome back, everybody. This is Ricardo Sandoval, the founding editor of Palabra, and also the public editor for PBS. That's the public broadcast service, which is powered by viewers like you. And I want to welcome two amazing and longtime friends of mine and also outstanding journalists, and bringing them together to talk a little bit about their career arcs and the place that NAHJ has had both in their hearts and in their careers. This is important because these two journalists epitomize a bit of a transition that we've all had to make, right? Starting out as print journalists, but then also paving new ways for new roads for us in different platforms now. And so we're going to hit all that, a little bit of that. But first, I want to introduce the two of them. So let me start by introducing Nora. Nora López is executive editor at the San Antonio Express News. Of course, we remember her, or we know her, as the immediate past president of NAHJ.
Gracias, Ricardo.
And also we have with us, Alfredo Corchado is the executive editor of Puente, the News Collaborative, a new nonprofit outlet dedicated to covering the U.S.-Mexico border region with accountability reporting and deep narratives about its people and cultures.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, NAHJ.
Thank you both for helping us commemorate NAHJ's 40th anniversary with your thoughts about your own career journeys. This is your conversation, but let me start you off by asking you this one important question. What do you think of our place as Latinos in American journalism today? And how do you see us evolving over the next 40 years?
Well, thank you, Ricardo. That's a big question because I think, we're all in a state of change. I think when I entered journalism, I never foresaw that we would be here at this crossroads right now, with so many different avenues for folks to get their news from, not just the traditional old school newspapers, which I'm frankly thankful that I'm still happen to be at one. But Alfredo is a perfect example of how our careers, our platforms are all changing. But one thing that hasn't changed, Ricardo, is the need to continue to encourage and to get more Latinos and journalists of color into our newsrooms. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but the reason we need to do that is because we have to reflect the communities that we cover.
I couldn't agree more with Nora. I mean, I started, as you said, many, many years ago, decades ago, and I feel like the sense of urgency is greater than before. I mean, as you see the population continue to grow, not just in the Southwest, but throughout the country, and the need for accurate accountability journalism, and to try to get away from the chaos, the conflict, the crisis of the border. I mean, I feel like the border has moved throughout the country, and it impacts any place in the United States. And it also reflects the greater need to have Latinos tell their own stories, tell their own narratives. The platforms have changed. I mean, when I met Nora, I think it was 1993, 94, I never dreamed that I would still be doing journalism. I mean, I had no idea what digital journalism was at the time. But I mean, this only reflects just how important it is at a time when this country is so divided, the need for more accurate reporting to, keep the community away from so much disinformation, so much misinformation. And as you see the future, I mean, I think there is a greater need to get the younger generations inspired.
You make a great point, Alfredo, and I think that, to me, is what NAHJ does best, that we're able to get together, even if it's once a year, and we're able to feed off of each other and learn from each other and just get inspired. I always feel like I leave NAHJ reinvigorated, inspired to do and try different things. And I'm always just so inspired and amazed by the next generation that's coming up behind us, and how well they are succeeding. I'm going to take a quick moment to talk very quickly about one of the conferences that I attended that I remember. I don't remember his name, but I remember he was a managing editor or a deputy managing editor at the Washington Post. And he gave this speech at lunch, and he talked okay, but the thing that stuck with me the most was how he complained, if you will, that they recognized the need for diversity, but that it was hard to find Latinos and journalists of color with the experience that they required and wanted at the Washington Post. And I remember kind of really being taken aback by that and thinking, well, what are you doing? What are you doing to mold that next generation? You know, what kinds of programs are you offering for the young journalists in the Washington, D.C. area so that they can get a taste? So all of that to say that I'm so proud that among the group who won a Pulitzer most recently at the Washington Post was two young ladies whom I know very well. One of them, Sylvia Foster Frau, who worked here at the Express News and is now at the Washington Post and was one of the lead reporters on their award-winning series. And the other is Arelis Hernandez, who's the VP for print for NAHJ. And so I feel like, wow, what a full circle moment.
You know, it brings memories of my very first convention ever. It was in Tucson in the early 1980s. And I remember Ray Chavez, my professor advisor at UTEP. I remember walking into his office and saying, Ray, I just been named the summer editor of the Prospector, the college newspaper. And he just looked at me, and I was waiting for the high five or that, you know, you've done it. And he said, Alfredo, it's time to shit or get off the pot. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, you've done enough college, you know, editor at the community college, you were at the local public radio station. You need an internship. You need to know whether this is what you want to do. And I need you to go home, get all your clips together, because I'm picking you up at 5 a.m. and we're driving to Tucson. And I had no idea what that meant, but I remember during the drive, he said, I want to introduce you to the Latino Pulitzer winners at the LA Times. And I was like, in awe, you know, but I remember I spent the whole night getting my clips together. I looked for my parents' one of their wedding albums, you know, one of the family albums, and just empty them and put my clips. And I don't even think I took a shower that morning. But I mean, I arrived at the hotel, and there was a reporter from the from the New York Times looking to do a story about a young Latino looking for his first or her first internship. And I walked in, and it was like, this is a guy I want to talk to. Interview me. And then you appear in the New York Times, and there was interest from recruiters. But I remember at the end of the day, I told Ray, I said, hey, I may get an internship at the New York Times or at the Wall Street Journal. And he said, no, you're going to Ogden. And I said, where the heck is Ogden? And it was Ogden, Utah. But I remember driving back to El Paso so inspired. I had met the likes of a Frank Del Olmo, a George Ramos, a Frank Sotomayor, Charlie Erickson. I mean, I was just roaring to go and pick up my pen and my notepad. But, you know, Nora, you hit it right on the spot. I mean, it was all inspiration.
I think there's so much for this next generation when they come to NAHJ. And so I think one of the most important things for young journalists who might be attending this year, maybe for the first time, is to put yourself in front of people like me and you and others and introduce yourself, because networking is so important down the road. You know, we may not have a job right now that might suit where you are right now, but later down the road we may. And so it's all about that networking. So when I needed a job after the San Antonio Light closed, I had met Gilbert at one of our regional conferences. So it's like you don't go in cold. You go in with a little bit knowing a little friendly face. And then similarly, when I returned back to San Antonio after Dallas, Carolina Garcia was the managing editor here at the Express News when I came back. And I had heard her speak at an NAHJ conference just like 2 years prior to that, and just was super inspired by the tips and that she gave and the talk that she gave about getting to where she was. So when I came to interview here, I was able to connect with her by bringing up, some of the things that she had spoken about. And of course, she liked it because she was like, "Oh, somebody was paying attention." But it was just awesome because Carolina was just fearless.
I mentor young journalists from UTEP, my alma mater, students from ASU and Columbia, and I just keep telling them the importance of going to NAHJ, the importance of meeting other journalists, because if there's one thing about NAHJ is that I speak for myself, and I'm sure I speak for you and Ricardo, but we're pretty generous about our time and about trying to pave the way for other people, to I mean, we're not going to do this all our lives, right? I mean, maybe we will. I don't know, but I mean, I remember I always tell students one of the mistakes I made when I started working for the Wall Street Journal was which my first full-time job, but I got to in Philadelphia, and I wanted to look like my other colleagues, look and sound like my colleagues. I didn't want to eat tacos. First of all, there was no tacos that I could find in Philadelphia. It was hoagies, cheesesteaks. But I started trying to dress up like them and talk like them. I remember my bureau chief at the time, Frank Allen, gave me probably the wisest words. He says, I want to remind you, I went to El Paso to recruit you. I could have gone to Harvard. I could have gone to Columbia. I could have gone to Northwestern. But I went to El Paso because I wanted my newsroom to look like America. And after that speech, I was never the same, because it's like suddenly I understood the importance of diversity. And I tell students that, I mean, for good reason, they're unsure about the future because it is a very rocky situation with journalism. But I keep telling people, just focus on the story, tell the story. You and I met in Arlington and the Mid-Cities Bureau, and I mean, what some of my most fantastic memories was of covering that community, trying to tell the Tejano Latino stories to our readers at the Dallas Morning News, but then getting the dream come true to go to Mexico. And I tell younger journalists today, that dream may seem distant, but you keep writing as we try to figure out the future of the industry. And that's one of the goals, to do that kind of reporting. I'm currently, as Ricardo said, I'm executive editor at Puente News Collaborative, and we're looking for a stable of freelancers in order to tell these stories, Mexico, the border, both sides of the border, but with the hope of building a real team in the months, years to come.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy, Alfredo, to see you succeeding in this new space, and I'm so proud of you, because I feel like I have not been brave enough, and I have stayed within the mainstream newspaper world for hopefully another couple of years, getting close to retirement.
Don't use that word. Don't use that. No.
¿Cuándo pasó eso? When did we get so old? So I'm always just still thankful that I'm in this still in this career and still practicing journalism at a traditional newspaper. It's so funny to me because growing up, we spoke Spanish first, but there was one word that I always had trouble with: periódico.
And that you're a periodista kicking butt,
just incredible. We're so lucky to be in this profession because it's such a great opportunity, and it's what I've always loved. When I was a reporter, getting out in the scene, going to interview people in person, meeting them, and let me tell you, being able to speak Spanish was an ace up my sleeve when I was in Dallas. I can remember interviewing people and interviewing them in Spanish because that was just what they were most comfortable in. And then just getting these amazing interviews that would propel my story onto page one. And it wouldn't have happened if I were not able to connect with people in their language and put them at ease and make them feel comfortable in sharing their stories.
I tell young journalists on the border, remember your superpowers. You know, the speaking two languages, that being able to navigate two cultures and two countries, that is your superpower. You may not know it because you live on the border, you take it for granted. But get away from the border, go to San Antonio, go to Dallas, go to Chicago, go to New York, Philadelphia, and suddenly it all comes to you. And that is what's going to, get you noticed and really push you far.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that unites us all as journalists is that, we have a passion for storytelling that exists within all of us, en nuestro corazón latino. And so, yes, you're right. We're the oral historians. We're the narrators of our culture and our herencia. But there's a lot of work still that remains ahead of us. And that's why NAHJ exists, because together we're stronger and together our voices are louder.
I remember my father's words that he said, I was a bracero and people came to recruit me to go pick their crops throughout the United States, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. It's your turn to go out and tell that story. Tell the story of the people who work under the sun like I did, who worked under the sun like you did when you were a child. And that made all the difference. And so, yes, times are tough, but our story has never been more important.
I couldn't have said it better, Alfredo.
Yeah, those are great words to bring this to a close. And listening to you guys talk, it just kind of reminds me of how far we've come, but also raises the little bit of a challenge that we have a long way to go, right? Thanks again, you two, for taking time out and helping us celebrate 40 years of NAHJ.
Thank you. Thank you, NAHJ.
Felicidades, NAHJ.
Yes.